It says, well, ooh, look at this. There's a difference between what you see on front of you and what I have printed in my Gemara, and I'm kind of surprised by it, but there's no real nafkamina. Here you see it says the Mishnah starts with the word nochri. Nochri means a non-Jewish fellow. Right. My printed Gemara here, I'm using the Oz V'Hadar, I think it's Oz V'Hadar, the Korean edition. So it's not the original, Vilna, but at least it's been updated. Okay? It's been corrected. It says Goy. So I don't know what you have in art school. Do you have Akum or something? Oh. Nochri. Okay, let's work with Nochri. Why do they prefer the word Nochri? Because a Goy is technically a collective noun. You don't find in the Torah Goy as referring to one individual, but rather to a whole nation. Right? It's a Yiddishism to refer to one particular Gentile as a Goy. But you say, what? There's a plural of Goy, Goyim. Yeah, Goyim doesn't mean many Gentiles. It means many Gentile nations. So the correct word here would be Nochri. I remember there was a Yakish fellow who used to say the bracha in the morning, Shelo asani Nochri. He did not make me a Gentile fellow. It says here, Shehilwa eth Yisrael al hameso. Okay? So the Gentile lent money to the Jewish fellow. Al hameso. Al hameso is means that the Jew used his own chametz as collateral. And what happens? So now, technically speaking, the Gentile is holding on to it. Usually, what happens with collateral? Does the lender seize the collateral and hold on to it, or is it just put up as collateral if it's written in the contract? If I don't pay this off by a certain amount of time, so you'll get the collateral. That's the usual case? No, sometimes actually it depends. It's actually a big nafkamina. Yeah. So when we're talking about metaltalin, if you put, let's say, karka or something really valuable, it's the achrayus for the shtar. That is the bill of the loan. So what happens is sometimes the borrower gets to actually hold on to that. It's signed over. There are witnesses. People know that this has been mortgaged. So he doesn't actually have to hand it over to the lender. However, well, I don't know. I don't deal with loan sharks, but we're dealing with metaltalin when we're talking about metaltalin, things that can be picked up and transferred. So yes, often the case was, especially in the olden days, that the lender would hold on to the metaltalin, whether it be the millstone or the suit jacket. In this case, it's the bottles of whiskey. That's his chametz. The bottles of whiskey, not corn-based whiskey, which is technically kosher for Passover. So I have a whiskey made from grain. So that would be chametz. And so the Gentile is holding on to the Jew's chametz over Passover. Achar Pesach mutar b'hana'ah. After Passover, that chametz, if it ends up in Jewish hands again, so it's not considered forbidden chametz. There's a general rule that chametz shavar alav Pesach. If a Jew was holding on to chametz throughout the time of Passover, so what happens? So it becomes prohibited. It stays prohibited. It's a penalty for having not gotten rid of the chametz. Now, here is the interesting thing. There are a lot of more Tanaim involved in this. Now, you read the Rambam, he'll tell you, well, it's not so clear. There has to be a few conditions for this to happen. But generally speaking, the general rule, if you just read the Mishnah, is that if the Gentile fellow was holding on to the chametz over Passover because he had a right to that chametz because it was collateral, so the chametz will remain mutter after Passover. The flip side is, Yisrael shechilwa et nochri al chametzo. The Jewish fellow is the one who lends to the Gentile. The Gentile has now given the Jewish fellow some chametz to hold on to, bottles of whiskey. So technically speaking, well, if the Jew had given over if the Jew had given over his chametz to the goy, so now it's considered as the goy's, it's not the Jews. If the goy gives over his chametz to the Jew, so it belongs to the Jew, achar Pesach asur bana. This is considered as though it was in the Jewish fellow's possession over Passover, and now it's forbidden if somehow it ends up in the hands of a Jew. Let's read what Rashi says. Rashi is also going to make note that there's a lot more to say. That's going to be the next daf. So we're not going to get to that today. So ask Rabbi Nadel about that. Rashi says me'eth. What happens here? Ma'oth means money, okay? Actual cash. Al chameso, using the chametz as collateral. Kodem ha-pesach, before Passover. This is all transacted before Passover. Avar allow ha-pesach, and now Passover passed. Mutar bana, and it's mutar bana. Later on, Rashi says, L'kamei, that's the next stuff. Bagmora mukila kisher hirhino etzlo bevetho. Hirhin means in regular Hebrew is mishkain. Mishkain itself is not, by the way, is not a biblical Hebrew. What's the biblical Hebrew term for this? The biblical Hebrew would be pe'eriv, okay? Ayin resh bet, and eravon. Eravon is a security. Here they're using hirhin. According to Steinsaltz, hirhin is more Arabic. Okay, that's the shoresh. Resh hey nun, and mishkain is more of a Mishnaic / Aramaic shoresh used for this point. Mashkanta, yeah. So that's a modern Hebrew word for mortgage. Okay, so the Jew basically gave over his chametz to the guy in his house. Basically, this chametz was not near not nimtza etzel the Jew. Okay, it wasn't seen. It wasn't found with the Jew. It was actually at the Gentile's house. Since the time the bill came due or the loan came due and he did not pay it, and also was not lacking collection. I really don't know how to vowelize that word guvaina. I'm saying yeshivish. I would imagine the vowelization is different, but I haven't seen a good argument exactly how to do it, so I'm not going to comment on it at this time. Okay? Basically, lacking collection doesn't need to be collected. The Gentile already has it in his house. Shaya etzlo, it was there. Shari etzlo, it's always been there. Natun, it's been placed there. Okay, we see the matter has been revealed retroactively that from when the Jew gave him the chametz, havadideh, it was already the Gentiles. That's the concept here. Even though you could say, give a good argument based on next off. Well, wait a second. If the Jew does pay it back, the Jew will have his chametz back. Igloi milsa, that it never was the Gentiles. It's like Schrodinger's, like I like to say, Schrodinger's security. Okay, this security, well, it depends. Does it belong to the borrower, or does it belong to the lender? So what will happen in the future will reveal its state as it always was. But right now, you can imagine that the security is in Schrodinger's box, like the cat, and it exists in a quantum foam of 50% belonging to him and 50% belonging to him, and the matter will only be revealed once we open the box when the loan comes due. Does that make sense? I'm sorry to use the quantum physics mashal, but I think it works very well for these types of cases. Confusing? Okay. You know about Schrodinger's cat? I'm sure someone does. Those who know. Schrodinger basically hypothesized that you put the cat in the box, and the box is sealed, and there's a device that basically flips a coin. It'll kill the cat or not. And it happens. Now, before any human opens the box, we don't know what the state of the cat is, alive or dead, until we actually open the box. So they say that the cat exists in this state of uncertainty. Okay, a quantum uncertainty, there's a quantum foam inside that tells you the cat is half dead and half alive. Okay, fine. So right now, I could have made we need a lot more halachas involved here, because what Rashi's telling us is basically assuming one result. Okay, it belongs to the Gentile. It always belonged to the Gentile because the Jew will not pay back the loan. But what if he does pay it back? So it shows that it was his all along. That's why we have to have more, I guess, conditions, more discussion to actually get to the halacha here. Okay, and then it says in Rashi, Yisrael shehilwa et hanochri, the Jewish fellow lends to the Gentile. I just embiggened it for the benefit of those at home and for myself. It says here, Nami, okay, same thing. Kewan dehirhino etzlo, because the Gentile deposited this chametz with the Jewish fellow, umataz maneh velo pirae, and the time came, and he did not pay off his debt. From the very time when he took it, it's considered as being in his house, or it's being in his domain. So the Jewish fellow basically had the Gentiles' chametz all Passover, and it became clear after Passover it was his all along. So now you have chametz shavar la Pesach in a Jew's hands, it becomes forbidden. Chametz shavar la Pesach is only a problem if the Jew owns it. Chametz shavar la Pesach in the Gentiles' hands is technically not a problem, which we have that nowadays. It's considered almost a default, like an assumption. If you are a regular balabas or a business in a Jewish community, you are going to contract the sale of your chametz before Passover, right? That's almost considered part of the rabbinic job description. You have to have, you should know a little bit about social work. You have to make sure there's an erev every Shabbos, give a drasha every Shabbos, and sell our chametz before Passover. And sometimes also arrange to buy us lulav and esrog before Sukkot. Okay, but generally speaking, that's why rabbis it's easier Shavuos. They're not really under much pressure to do much before Shavuos specifically. Okay, that is that for the Mishnah. Let's see this. Okay, first general discussion, ask a question about the Mishnah, but we have to establish what Abai and Rava are thinking. What do they say? Itmar is ne'amar. It was said. Baal chov, concerning a creditor. What is a creditor? A guy who lends money. Okay, now he's owed the money. Abai amar limafreya hu goveh. Abai says, whatever he acquires, that is when he basically seizes the collateral, it's limafreya, it's retroactive. V'Rava amar mikan ulahaba. Rava says, no, only from now, from the point when the loan came due and it wasn't paid. Let's read Rashi. Baal chov, hamaweth chaviro. Baal chov is one who lends to his fellow. Wishibeidlo nechasau. And also he basically used his property as collateral. He subserviated his property. Sheim lo efralecha. And that's a quote. If I do not pay back to you, ad yom pluni, until certain day, giva minichsai, v'giazman v'lo para. Says, take from my property if the time comes, and the time came and you didn't pay. So now time to collect. What? No, I don't know if Rashi's just explaining what Abaye holds. It is retroactive. He says, take it now, but Abaye then adds, Abaye amar l'mafreya hu goveh. Technically speaking, it's retroactive. That's when he takes it, but it's as though he had it all along. I'll read Rashi. Gevyato shegava achshav, his collection that he collects now, igloi miltha, means it's revealed, the matter has now become clear. Dimisha shehilwahu amidu nichasau halo b'cheskatho. In reality, from the time when he first lent to him, sorry for the pronouns, his property was already standing in the other guy's chazaka. It was like the other guy had it. That is, from the time the loan was transacted, it is as though the borrower's property has been in the possession of the lender. Okay? Even though the lender only really says, it's mine now, once the debt came due and it was not paid, Abaye says there's a certain retroactivity to this acquisition. It's as though he had it all along. How does retroactivity work? I don't know, but it's a legal thing, and it's actually quite necessary. Okay, that's Abaye's opinion. Rava says, according to Rashi, Einan b'chezkatho ela mikan ulahaba. That which the lender collects is only considered as being in the lender's possession. Hey, by the way, chezkatho and birshutho. What's the difference? They're using it interchangeably. Okay? Birshutho, I think, is something that they use more with regards to Passover laws. Right? Why? Because Passover, you don't necessarily want to hold on to this chametz, but if it's in your reshut, that's the standard, is this considered something that has to be destroyed, the isser of bal yiroi, bal yimatzeh. When we talk about chazaka, though, we're generally speaking about, let's say, property, not chametz. We're talking about real estate, the field or the house. And that's why now we're using the word chazaka and not reshuth. Okay? Einan b'chezkatho ela mikan ulahaba. Rava says that when the lender collects the collateral because the debt was not paid, the collateral is only considered as in his possession from now on. Ulakamei mefarish l'may nafkamina. And further on, we're going to say that what's nafkamina. You could try to already begin to not guess nafkaminas, but understand which way we're going. Why? Because if the machlokas Abaye and Rava is how long the lender actually held on to this property, well, it tells you, well, who's responsible for that property in that time, the time of under dispute. Okay? Let's continue in the Gemara. The Gemara says over here. Ugovet. So that's what Rava said. This is the last word in the second to last line. Kol heicha de akdesh loveh The zabein loveh, zabein instead of zavein. There's a nafkamina. Zabein means he sells, okay, instead of buys. Zavein would be he bought. Zabein means he sold. They look very much the same in Aramaic. In Hebrew, it's machar and kana, so you see the difference. But here in the Aramaic, it's hard to see the difference. So the Gemara is positing that there is a case. As long as, let's say, the loveh, that's the borrower, dedicated the property to the temple, or he sold it to someone else, kuliyama lo pligi date malveh v'taref. Okay? Well, Abai and Rava would acknowledge that the lender can still come and seize that property. What's going on here? Actually, this is a kind of, I don't know if this is crooked, but sometimes someone has to do this. They're talking about Ruvain. Ruvain borrows from Shimon. Ruvain put up his property as a collateral. So Ruvain now has money from Shimon. Ruvain will have to pay back Shimon. And if Ruvain does not pay Shimon eventually, Shimon will come and take Ruvain's property. What does Ruvain do with that property meanwhile? Well, you can guess. He's selling it, or he's dedicating it to the Beis HaMikdash. So when Shimon comes to collect, Shimon will see, wait a minute, you put up this nice big building on Usishkin Street as collateral, and now some other guy has it. Or you turn that big building in Usishkin Street into a synagogue. It's hektish. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to collect? So the halacha is that somehow it's called toref. In this case, he can seize it like a predator. He preys on it. That's what this Mishnaic word means, that Shimon, when collecting the property, doesn't care who this third party is. He's grabbing the property as though it still belongs to Ruvain. Even though Levi is sitting there holding the bag, it's like, wait, Ruvain sold this property to me. It was mortgaged. He shouldn't have been selling it to me, maybe. I don't know, maybe he got really desperate. He was taking loans and he was selling properties he should not have sold. So Levi's left holding the bag. Levi is going to be there as Shimon comes and takes the property from him. That's not so good. Or we're going to get into this. I brought in the Rambam from Erechim to explain the next case. I found that it's easier to read it from the Rambam than from Rashi. It answers all the questions. But let's see what Rashi says here. Kuli alma lo pligi. Okay? And by the way, Rashi is the one who told us over here, Kol hecha de akdesh loveh. In any case where the borrower, who now doesn't really have the rights to his own property, dedicates it to the temple, nichasav b'toch hazman. Meanwhile, before the loan came due, what's he doing? He's handing it over to the Kohanim. O zabein loveh. Why did it say zabein? Mochran la'achirim. Rashi tells you he didn't buy it from others, he sold it to others. He's telling in Hebrew, mochran la'achirim. He sells the property to someone else. Kuli alma lo pligi, Rashi says, afilu l'rava, the amar ad achshav hayu birshuth loveh. Rava said, once the malveh is collecting, the lender is collecting the collateral, it's now only considered his from this point, the collection point. However, modeh hu de'ein mechirato la'achirim mechira. Rava still says that the loveh, that is the borrower, can't just decide, well, I'm going to sell this property to others. He might have to give it over. Okay? It's still his. It does not belong to the lender. But that doesn't mean the seller can just do whatever he wants with it. Ve'ein hekdesho hekdesh. Further, his dedication of this property to the temple does not count. Okay? Why not? Sharei memushkanim heim lamalweh. They are in security. They're held in security for the lender. Va'afagav shehein shelo. Okay? Even though they are his, here's an important one. He doesn't have chazaka, a non-bir shutho. He doesn't have the right to do what he wants with it. He could be a machzik. That is, very good distinction here. He could be the one sitting in the house. He could be one tending the field. Okay? It looks like a chazaka, but it's not his to do. Reshuth means he can't just do what he wants. Make sense? Rahman Amar, and the merciful one said, this is in Vayikra, V'ish ki yakdishes beto kodesh. Okay? If a person dedicates his house and makes it holy, ma beto birshutho, just like his house is within his rights to do something, av kol sheb birshutho. Oh, so av kol birshutho. So too, anything that's within his rights. Okay? He might have a chazaka, but he doesn't have the reshuth to do what he is doing. Okay? So Abai would say, of course, Abai would agree to this, that Abai would have said, of course the loveh can't sell or dedicate any of this stuff. The second he used it as a security or as a collateral for the loan, it's already in the chazaka, and therefore the rishus, of the malveh. The chiddush is according to Rava. Rava says it still belongs to the lender. It only belongs to the borrower once the borrower sees it, but it doesn't mean the lender can do what he wants with his property. Why did people dedicate property to the Beis Hamikdash? It's gone. Once you dedicate it, not really, it's really hard to get it back, if possible even. Why would someone do that? Well, yeah, but people give money, but you give away your property. Your children don't inherit it. It doesn't go back in the Yovel and things like that. Really difficult. Okay. It says here, Da'ate ma'weh v'taref. Minal kachot b'chinam. That is, if Ruvain did not pay back the loan to Shimon, Shimon will come and seize the property. And even if Levi's now has the property because Ruvain sold that property to Levi, Shimon's still going to take it away from Levi, and Levi's going to have no claims against him. Levi's going to have to go to Reuven and say, "Why did you sell me property that you actually used as collateral?" Okay, kind of difficult. What about hektish? Can Levi go to the hektish? That's very interesting. Levi go to the Kohanim and say, "Sorry, Kohanim, Reuven dedicated this field to the Beis Hamikdash. It turns out, sorry, not Levi, Shimon. Okay, what happens here is Shimon once his loan paid back, and Reuven's field is no longer, has Reuven's sign outside the field and Reuven's fence. It has a Beis Hamikdash fence, like the official seal of the Beis Hamikdash. I would guess that the Beis Hamikdash has its own flag and its own symbol that looks like the flag that they have now. You've seen that? It's taken off in the last few years, the Beis Hamikdash flag. The soldiers have it. Okay? So now has the official thing. Or maybe the Beis Hamikdash official symbol was Kruvim. I don't know. Okay, something like that. Okay, different organizations or whatever they decide. So Shimon's going to approach the Kohanim and demand this property back. Okay? How's he supposed to get it back? Let's jump to the next page. Well, not back. He's going to want it for his, to pay off the debt. So I'm going to read what the Gemara says, and I'm going to read what the Rambam says. As a matter of fact, maybe I should put the Rambam on the screen right here. Look at this. You guys have a Rambam Erechin, Arachim and Charamim, perhaps? No? I'm going to put it over here. In the 7th parak. Oh. Okay. So let's read the Gemara says. Let's finish the Gemara over here. He says, Wati malveh ufarik. Okay? And here it says that the lender can come and somehow remove the property even from hektish and now use it for his own purposes. Okay? Okay, but hektish has it. So it's going to say, Ditnan, the Mishnah says, Mosif odinar ufoden et hanichasim ha'elim. Okay? What the lender does is he'll give a token amount, one more dinar, and he will redeem the property. I'll read to you how the Rambam describes this case. I like this. I brought here the Makbili edition because that's what I had next to me, and it's travelable, and I can write notes in it. I cannot write notes into this online edition from Machon Mamre. So there you go. Even though highly recommended. Also, you don't see the Nikud here, but it's okay. We can read without the dots. Okay? Well, Rambam explains here what's going on right here at the top. Hamakdish kol nechasav. A person dedicates all his property to the temple. Wow, that's pretty extreme, but that's what he does. Well, I thought allow kithubat isha o shetrei baalei chovot, but he still has to pay kasuba to one of his wives. Marriage is ending; it's not her fault, so he has to pay her the sum indicated in the kasuba. That's considered a debt, or he has bills of loan against him. That is, he has creditors. Hey, people are coming. You took out loans. Now you have to come and pay them. Okay? This woman can't collect her kasuba money, what's owed to her, from that which is dedicated to the temple. Neither can the creditor collect. Okay? The hektish, okay? The hektish has basically made it that there's no shibud on this. There's no obligations anymore. Aval kishim korak deish hakarka shalo. But if the hektish sells his property then, V'teitzei asadeh l'chulin, and once it's now, what was
Yeah,
that?
in Middleburg.
Hold on, sorry, I can't see that. Everybody requested to mute yourselves so that we don't have any feedback here. There's quite a few people here. Okay, let's get back to this. Okay. Yesh leval chov laisha ligbot min apodeh sharei shibudo omeid al karka zo. If some, I guess, some unfortunate individual says, "Wow, the temple hasn't going to make money from this property. The temple's going to sell the property. The cash that it gets from this will be considered holy. Okay, the temple will sell it, okay, on a profit perhaps. So the temple benefits. So, yeah, so someone comes along and says, "Here, I'll buy it off the temple. I see a nice property over there. Temple selling it. I will buy it." What's going to happen the second he buys it? Suddenly, this woman's going to come back, or the creditor, right? And now they'll have a claim on it. They'll come to the podeh. That's the person who bought it off the temple, the redeemer from the temple, and they're going to want to collect. It says ligbot min ha podeh. See that? Like, maybe the guy is really kind to the temple. He's going to pay the temple just to get a property that some creditor or some jilted wife is going to come and seize from him. What is this technical legal allowance like? Lishnei lakuchot, to two customers. Shekedavala rishon dinu dvarim ainli imach. Okay, the woman, when she agreed to the marriage, she basically signed on the ketubah that I don't have any claims against you. That's what she tells the hektish. But then he sells to the next person, she terefet min sheni. But I do have a claim against the second guy. So the implication is that this woman, for example, knows that her ksuba isn't going to come from hektish, but if somehow that property is removed from hektish, then she's going to take it. What's going to happen? The cheitzad podin karka zehish. So how can this guy redeem the karka? Someone, don't forget, there's a lender here who wants his money back. There's a lender who wants his money back. And now he sees that the property that he was supposed to be his collateral is in the hands of the temple. What's he going to do? So first of all, we have to establish that there actually are creditors. First, we stand this woman or the creditors or the creditor in front of the court, and we have them take an oath. First, take an oath. What? Basically, if anybody tries to collect from encumbered property, that's the correct legal term. First, to prove that they have this claim, they need to swear to it. The woman swears, I solemnly swear on the Sefer Torah that my ex-husband still has not paid off his ksuba. Or the creditor says, I solemnly swear that, even though they have, by the way, she has a star, he has a star, supposed to say, still haven't collected. Solemnly swear, in the name of the Lord, that what? I have not yet to collect this loan. That's the first thing. And then the Beis Din makes a formal announcement, or through hektish, that there's a property that's going to be up for sale. They have this still in America. They have to have, there's certain properties that are unclaimed. They put in the newspaper. They have like page after page of unclaimed properties. I don't know who looks through those things, but sometimes there's some real mitzias there. Okay, they make a karoz morning and evening for 60 days. What's going to happen? Kimoshe biarnu, as he explained in earlier prakim, v'omrim kama adam rotzeh litain bisadeh zo. We try to figure out how much a person would pay for this property. And we're saying, does anybody want to pay this property? But just to know, if you redeem this property, you pay its value, someone's going to come and seize it. Okay, just to know, that's what you're going to get into. Okay. So who's going to buy it? Yeah, exactly. Who's going to buy it? So D is basically the one who's going to do it. Mr. D. That's what I wrote in my book. Okay. Okay. So what's going to happen? Watch. It's actually quite clever. The Beis Din that's affecting this will make it to the benefit of this person. Okay. Watch what happens. Mashbina. Sorry, I'm not here. V'achar shepudinoto lokech afilu bedinar. Okay. The person who wants to reclaim this, okay, the lender. Remember, by the way, we're about to see that this property might be worth more than the loaner of the ksuba. Okay, let's say the property is worth 400 zuz. Okay, property is worth 400 zuz. The woman is owed 200 zuz, right? Let's say she's owed 200 zuz. So this fellow, if he gets the property, will sell it off. He'll give half of the proceeds to the woman, the other half will be his. Or if the creditors are only owed, I don't know, 300 sous, but the property is worth 400, that means he'll be left at the end with 100 sous to deal with. Okay? So there is a possibility of profit. But then again, it might not cover everything. Okay? It might cover some, but not all. We don't know exactly. They give him a major discount. The authorities allow him to redeem this property for a single dinar. Okay? We're assuming it's worth hundreds. This is a technical thing. You can't just let the hekdesh leave the Beis Hamikdash's, treasury without something in return. So he gives something in return, but a lot less than it's actually worth. And then, using this property, he allows this woman, magbeh lo goveh, goveh means he collects it. Magbeh means that he allows, there should be a dot in the hay, so maybe it's a magbah. I don't know how they've vowelized it here, but I know there's a dot in the hay. It's a pronounced hay, so it's not a silent hay, so there shouldn't be a regular hirik there. Hold on a second. Yeah, magbeh, wow, he wrote magbeh? Surprised. Maybe I got it wrong. No, you're right. Yeah, it's silent hay. No dot in the hay. It's not magbia. Okay, goveh is silent hay. Okay, so he allows this woman to collect her ksuba, or the Baal Chov, the creditor, to collect his debts. Could be that there's a loss here. The chov was 100 shekels, right? 100 whatever units, 100 dinar, but the property is only worth 90. This was on condition. Okay, indeed, did this on condition that he knew what he was getting into. Because, by the way, like most other transactions, people who I guess the bigger the risk you take in investment or in a transaction, the more you stand to gain, but also the more you stand to lose. That's what the definition of risk is. D has a chance to lose big time, but normally you might even profit a little bit. That's what the Rambam's saying here. Okay, so what does this have to do with our Gemara? Back to the Gemara over here. This explanation, the Malvet basically goes to Hekdesh and sees, wait a minute, the property I was supposed to seize from Ruvain, this is Shimon talking, Shimon's the lender. Ruvain borrowed, Ruvain then dedicated this property to the temple. How does Shimon collect? Shimon goes to the Beis Din, or the Gizbar, whatever it is, and explains the situation, and they will eventually allow him to redeem this field from Hekdesh at a fraction of the cost. Okay, for a single dinar. Mosif dinar, and that's good enough, and then he'll be able to collect from Shimon's, from the property that Ruvain had dedicated. Okay? Now, what did we say? What was the point of this? We're just trying to show, back a previous page, that even though Rava claims, okay, the Rava Shita is that the lender technically only gains the property once the debt is not paid on time, it doesn't mean that the borrower can do whatever he wants with the property. Okay? Okay? There's still a shibud, as they call it. It's still collateral. So even if the borrower sold off the property or dedicated it, the lender will have recourse and somehow get his hands on that property because it was technically, to a certain extent, meant to be his all along. Yeah. As a matter of fact, and they're also ripping off the Jewish people in that regard. Why is it the tabo and all that? Do you own property in Israel? Yeah, they say it's like just a rental for 100 years or something like that, which is really not fair. I think that the point of, we read Parshas Bahar and Bachukosai, when it says it's God's land and you don't really own it, that's like a higher level term, and the Basar V'Dom way of understanding it means that it belongs to the Jewish person who owned it all along. Okay? At the Yovel, it reverts. God himself explains that. Normally you have what is it? God dwells in the temple. Does God dwell in the temple? That's Moshe Rabbeinu's term that he quoted God as saying. But what is the unkelus / halachic / explanatory non-anthropomorphic understanding of such an idea? Does God dwell in the temple? What does it mean? It means that there is a place dedicated to God's name and his service. Okay? That's the non-anthropomorphic way of understanding it. So when you say God owns the land and you don't, The real world way of explaining it is God gave it to a particular Jew and he owns it in perpetuity. And no one else, even if he sells it, no one else has total rights to that place. It'll always revert to his or his descendants' property. Wait a minute. So when is the nafkamina? When do Abai and Rava actually argue? So the Gemara continues, Ki plige de zabein malveh the kadesh malveh. What happens if the lender were to sell the property or to dedicate the property? Okay, the lender is sitting there with his collateral, right? Shimon basically says, well, Ruvain mortgaged his property to me. Ruvain will only get it back if Ruvain pays on time. But I'm pretty much certain Ruvain will not be paying. Okay, I'll work on this. The assumption is Ruvain will not pay. This is already mine. So now I'll already sell the property. I'll flip the property. I'll improve the house. I'll invest in a little bit, and I could sell it for greater. Or I'll be very magnanimous, and I'll be pious, and I'll dedicate it to the temple. Can you do that? Yep, that's where Abai and Rava are going to disagree. Says here, Abai Omar the mafreya hu goveh. Okay, Abai says everything's retroactive. When he collects, kevan demata zmanei v'lo parei, because the time comes and Ruvain does not pay off the loan to Shimon. Igloai miltha le mafreya. The matter has been revealed retroactively. D'meikara birshutei hava kai. Okay, that it was always from the beginning. It was always in his. Who's his? In the lender's reshuth, his domain, and v'shapir akdesh v'shapir zabein. Okay, and it was therefore pretty sound that Shimon, the lender, dedicated this property or sold this property. Wow, wild. Okay, could have done it, but of course, there's the other way of saying the flip side. Wait a minute, but he could have paid it off. How do you know? When Shimon started playing with this property by selling it or dedicating it, how did he have the certainty that it's going to be his all along? Yeah, Ruvain never paid. Igulay Milsa. But before that happened, I don't know, are we prophets or something? I'll take great prophets, Ella prophets. Okay. Rava Amar, okay. Rava said, Mikanu labahu goveh. The lender only collects from now, once the bill came due, and only now. Okay, but not before. Why? Kevan de ilu havile zuzeh, because if Ruvain would actually come up with the cash, have misalekluhu bezuzeh. Right? He could have gotten rid of him. Ruvain could have gotten rid of Shimon. And he said, "Sorry, Shimon, I'm paying back the loan." And what? Ishtakach dehashta kakaneh. So you find that it's only now that he actually has acquired this. Okay, only now he has actually acquired this because, for all you know, we could have paid off the debts. Let's read Rashi over here on the right side. I read you Rashi, the first Rashi. I read the more of the Rambam way of reading it. Okay, Rashi is slightly different, but it was easier for me to read it in Rambam, so that's where I read it there. Okay, let's see here. Kipligi the akdesh malveh. The argument is when the malveh is the one who's doing the dedicating of this property that's right now held in collateral. B'toch hazman et hakarka hamishubad. The lender dedicated the property during the time. That means before the loan became due. And what did he do? He used the encumbered property. Okay, hamishubad, the one that's encumbered to him. V'lo hikdish et hachov, ela et hakarka. Rashi is making an important distinction here. He didn't dedicate the debt, like the star, like the right to collect, but instead he actually dedicated the property. V'ashta ki giazman. Now at the time the loan became due. V'lo pirao zeh. Okay, and this guy, the borrower, did not pay it off. V'hu ba'lig vota, and he, that is the lender, comes to collect mina loveh from the borrower. Klozer bo min hekdesh. Okay, so now it's come back. Never was hekdesh. Okay, you can't dedicate your encumbered property to hekdesh. I need to take it in order to pay off instead of in lieu of the cash. And this is a statement from Rava's explanation. Kevan di elo hawa le zuzeh. Since if he were to have money, la loveh, that is, if the borrower had the money, biyom azman, okay, when the day you had to pay the loan, hava misalik le he could have gotten rid of the malve, pay him off, that's it. And that's misalik min karka. Now he doesn't hold on to the property. Bizuzei ishtachach shelo haya karka konui. He uses zuzei and to pay him off, and then you find ishtachach shelo haya karka konui lo. Okay, it never was his, even though he was holding his collateral. Turns out it never was his. Adayin never, well, until that point. Ella achshav kishu goveh ota b'chovo hi nikneit lo. There's always the possibility that the property will be, well, that the loan will be paid off, so the property never transferred. By the way, which one just, I think, if I had to argue legally, which one made more sense, I'd say the Rava one, right? Why? Because it's a chazaka. This property belongs to Ruvain. Ruvain stands to lose it if he does not pay off his debt to Shimon. But that's the condition, if he does not pay off his debt to Shimon. And by the way, the Rambam is going to mention this later in halachas, that actually becomes part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah actually says that when we're selling the chametz, we're using the chametz as collateral, they actually say, they attach these conditions to it and say, when is the collateral considered as having entered the domain of the lender? Okay? Actually, because there's this discrepancy and also this, and what? Yeah, but if he held on to it, trying to say that they could actually, considering the fact that we've now seen that there's, legal mechanisms that are automatic, perhaps you can make a t'nai and say that, now that we know that Abai and Rava have this machlokes, we are just going to make a condition in the contract that we're going to hold like Abai or like Rava. You could do that, technically speaking. Okay, we were talking about if it's unsaid. Okay, but you could say that if I do not pay by, I don't know, what's today's date, the 4th of Teves, then you can acquire this as though you had acquired it on the 25th of Kislev. Right? Today's the 4th of Teves, if I'm not mistaken. So, there you have it.
Isn't there an issue that this collateral is given to the other person or is held by the group and holds on to the land, even though there's a lien on it, obviously until he pays the debt off, or whether he gives them the land.
Yeah, that would be an nafkamina also. Who's the chazaka? Who's the one who's actually sitting on the land once it's mortgaged? Or are they both there? When Ruvain takes the loan from Shimon, does Shimon start setting up shop? Okay, or that's a lot more complicated. We're talking about if they don't make such a declaration, the assumption is that metaltalin actually end up next to or given over to the lender, but the real estate, the house or the field, the lender doesn't actually do something. He doesn't walk over there and somehow hold on to it, or generally speaking. Okay, that's why we have these cases. Shimon thinks he's going to collect the property, and the time comes to collect the property. What does he find? No, he finds that it's gone. He finds that the property now has the keep out hektish sign, or the property has someone else's name entirely. Okay, yeah, Levi bought it. Now it says Levi's Farm. Levi Strauss and Company or something like that. Okay, so let's see. Let's continue here. We're going to say that perhaps Rava didn't say this. This is actually a pretty complicated case that is unlikely. The reason the Gemara is giving this case is to bring out the point. Okay, so yeah, no, there might not be any real, similarity to real life in this case. But let's try to understand this case. Have you guys seen this case yet? Okay, so we'll start it. Here's how it goes. Mi Omar Rava Hachi. It's true that Rava said this whole Rava idea, Mikan ul Haba, the acquisition of the lender of the property, okay, is only from the time when the bill became due or the loan became due. The Hamar Rami Bar Chama, we have a case. Rami Bar Chama says, Ruvain shemachar sadeli Shimon. Ruvain sells a field to Shimon. Okay. B'achrayus. What does achrayus mean? Achrayus means that Shimon thinks he owns this field, but it could very well be that one of Ruvain's previous creditors or Ruvain's ex-wife is going to come and collect that property. So Shimon is going to be sitting around saying, well, I paid for good property, Ruvain, and now someone else claimed it. I guess it was your bestest property. You had to pay from your bestest to these creditors. So give me something else. Okay, that's the achrayus. Give me something else because the first thing I bought from you was seized by one of your creditors.
Take it away. You have to less than $100,000.
Something like that, yeah. That's the achrayus. Uz kafan alav bimilveh. Wow, Reuven's a little bit of a sucker, but Shimon didn't actually pay for this right. Okay? Shimon has a field from Reuven now, be'achrayus, but Shimon didn't even pay Reuven for it. Why? Shimon then says to Reuven, but I'm a little bit short on the cash. I'll give you the cash later. It's as though Reuven is doing two things. Reuven is selling a field to Shimon, and Reuven is lending money to Shimon. Okay, so Reuven becomes both the seller and the lender, and Shimon becomes the buyer and the borrower. It's like, I don't know, buying property from the bank and then getting a mortgage from the bank. Okay? Can you do such a thing? Yeah, banks do sell property and banks do give out mortgages, so why don't they do it? Okay, so basically, I don't know, Reuven's really got himself into a real situation here because he's given Shimon all the power. Okay? He sold the field with achrayus to Shimon, but Shimon is yet to pay anything. Shimon just owes him money. And by the way, if Shimon doesn't come up with the money soon, where's Shimon going to get the money? Just give him the field back? Okay, just revert, I guess it's a little bit funny. It's like taking out a debt on a debt. Yeah, okay, maybe. That's kind of funny that Reuven would let Shimon do this. I'll let Shimon have the property, and I'll give him achrayus, and I will not expect any money yet from Shimon. Why would Reuven do such a thing? We don't know. But the point is to bring out a halacha, an interesting halacha. What?
Yeah, we're just making a hypothetical case.
Yes, hypothetical case. So in order to make this strictly Talmudic, we're going to have to introduce orphans and an ox. I'm kidding, just the orphans, no ox. Okay, but you have a taref thing, so you can't have an ox. It has to be a predatory animal. Okay, here we go. Mace Reuven. Hold on one second. And now Reuven died. Okay, so Reuven gave his property to Shimon, guaranteed achrayus, and never accepted the payment. The payment was like a loan. And now instead of Reuven, we have Bnei Reuven. Okay, Bnei Reuven are considered orphans. Why? Well, it's kind of interesting. The liability of the orphans is quite low because they want to help them. We're assuming, by the way, orphans are not bar mitzvah or at least not adult to take care of themselves, so they get certain privileges. Okay? Okay. V'ata bal chov de Reuven, and Reuven had debts. Okay? And Reuven's creditor comes, v'taref le mi Shimon, and seizes his property from Shimon. So Shimon could tell Bnei Reuven, in a second, I have achrayus. Your father guaranteed achrayus. They could say, yeah, but you never even paid for the property. Okay? So you still owe us money. But Shimon's not trying to claim that yet. First of all, this creditor seized Shimon's property because, Reuven's property, basically, he was owed it all along. Okay? He's the first creditor, chronologically speaking. V'atei Shimon ufaisei bezuzeh. Now Shimon wants to go to this creditor and give him some money for this property. Okay? Here, take this. I know Reuven owed you money. Reuven died. He never paid you. You want to seize this Reuven's property that used to be Reuven's that I have. I'll pay you off so I can hold on to the property. That's what he's basically doing. That's what Shimon's doing. Okay? Yeah. Dinahu, datu b'nei Reuven. Technically speaking, the halacha is that Bnei Reuven can come and say, Vamri leila Shimon, they tell Shimon, Anan mitaltele shavak avon gaboch. Okay? With regards to us, you have our father's metaltalin with you. Okay? That means you owe us what? Money. You owe us a metaltalin.
Yeah, because Shimon never paid for the
Yeah. Umitalti liyatmi levalchov lo mishtabdi. Okay? And the metaltalin of the orphans are not considered as encumbered to the balchov. Okay? So what does Rashi here say? Hold on one second. Okay, Dinahu. Rashi says, Afal gav de'avuhon kabila le'achrayus mechira zo. Okay, even though their father had accepted achrayus and made a guarantee to Shimon, you'll hold on to the property, or I'll give you a new one. Afilu hachi, it doesn't matter. Yecholim b'nei Ruvain lavo al Shimon. B'nei Ruvain can tell Shimon v'lomar anan mitalteli shavak avun gabach. Okay, concerning you, our father left mitaltelin with you. What does that mean? Lo ayitha chayav alav ela ma'oth. You still owed money for that property that you bought from our dad. You never paid it. V'lo hayalach litnon leval chov. You shouldn't have given it to that creditor. You should have given it to us. V'lo la'akvan b'shvil achrayut mechiratcha. Okay? And you shouldn't have held it for the achrayus of your sale. Okay? You're hoping that somehow you could get rid of this creditor and then you'll be able to, I don't know, get something else from us. Okay? Our metaltalin don't have to go to pay off any of our father's debts. The karka shel yatomimhu, okay, because it belongs to, it's like the property of the orphans. Okay, if it's real property, we said that the creditor can come and collect from the orphans in their father's debt. Okay, it's as though they stand in the place of their father, whatever he still owed. Because even while it's still alive, the shibud, the fact that it belongs or it's owed to this creditor, already happened. Okay, but for the money that the father never got, okay, the lo hayu be'ain, they never were actually there. Lo chayil shibudo mechayim. The creditor cannot make any claim on that. Okay, Reuven never had it while he was alive. Sorry, alihem. Shehein ba'in, when they actually exist, ein kan loveh. Ein kan loveh. When they do exist, there is no lender here. Borrower. Uvalemos dahainu yutamim lo hilva zeklum. Okay, basically they're not there. The loveh is the one who borrows. That's Reuven. It's as though he didn't actually owe anything. It's as though his children didn't owe anything to this creditor. Okay, it's kind of interesting. Well, like I was saying before, these orphans basically have a certain privilege. They have to pay off certain debts of their father, but not all the debts. Their father owes cash to someone, so they don't necessarily have to repay that. It's like as though their father never had it. But people who owed money to their father, yes, they do collect. Okay, they're privileged here. So what does Rava say? Rava actually has a good idea. Rava says something here. Now, this is actually a complicated case. I wrote a note over here. Turn the page. Okay, what the guy's going to say. Okay, he says if he's a pikeach, what should he do? Hold on. Let's see. Bnei Ruvain, V'amar Shimon, Chol Mishtabi, V'amar Rava. Okay, what does Rava say? I pikeach Shimon. If Shimon's smart, Magbei lehu ara. Okay, he collects the property for them. V'hadar gabelei minayhu. Okay, what Shimon should do in order to pay off his debt, like to actually buy the property from these orphans. Remember, he still owes them money. Okay, you know what? Even if he tries to pay off Reuven's creditor, it still doesn't help. The orphans still have a claim against Shimon. Okay, Shimon, you owe us money. You owed our father money, so you owe us money. So what you do is say, well, I don't have any money. I'll give you a piece of property. Okay, here, I'm paying for my sale. I never paid for this property. I'm now paying for it now with property. And your father guaranteed me achrayus on this, so I'm collecting it as the achrayus. Okay? Yeah, that's what Rava says. Now, this seems to be that, wait a minute, this doesn't fit with what Rava said, at least the challenges doesn't fit with what Rava says. It says, V'hadar gabi la minayhu. Okay? Then he could go collect it from the orphans. You see what's going on here? Yeah, so Reuven actually got his kids into a bad situation by selling a field with achrayus and never collecting the money. Okay? So Shimon's going to give him the field. Okay? That's what I'm paying for it. I'm paying a field for a field. And now I'm collecting achrayus from whatever field I just gave you. Interestingly enough. By the way, this is all caused by the fact that Reuven, I guess he didn't have a lawyer or was thinking through this whole thing. Well, how does this work? Rav Nachman said, Yithomim shegavu karka b'chuvat avihem. If orphans collect karka, some land, as the debt that was owed to their father, Baal chov chozer v'goveh oto. then the Baal Chov, the person to whom the father owed the money, some money initially, can go and grab that land from them. Or as I put a quote here, what's Shimon saying? I owed your dad something. He tells the orphans, I owed your dad something, but he already owed something to someone else. Okay? I have to pay the property, but he owes achrayas to me, who happens to be me. Okay, we have your dad owes something to me, and I owe something to him. So I'm going to do it that I'm going to first pay to him, but then he's going to have to pay to me. Okay, that's why it's a pekeach if he's smart. If he says the other way around, he owed to me, but I first owe to him. It doesn't really work that way.
The orphans is smart, they're gonna insist on collecting money.
Yes. So we're saying that we're not talking about from the orphan's point of view here. We're saying, yeah. And that's why, by the way, the Beis Din has an official policy, what? That when you have orphans, you have to know who the apotropos is. And there's two general cases that if the fellow knows he's going to pass away, he's has a chance to set things in order, he'll appoint an apotropos. Okay, someone of his choice and someone smart to run things. And if not, the Beis Din will step in. Sometimes people they don't know when your time comes, and there was no planning. So the Beis Din appoints an apotropos, and the Gemara actually has a machlokes who's more responsible. Okay, there's actually a Tanaic argument there. Who's more responsible? The man who was legally appointed apotropos before this man passed away, or the one who is appointed by the Beis Din? Okay? So they're different halachic statuses, but that's what they want to do. We're not going to have time to see the answer, so I'll say a little bit outside. Okay, what this whole thing is that Rava would say there's no retroactivity, but it seems to be that there is a little retroactivity going on here. Why? I'll just say it here. That this mechanism works because if you hold like Abaye says there's some retroactivity involved here, so whatever he gets now is already considered as belonging to the creditor. So now the creditor comes in, steps in, and gets it. Okay, it's as though he collected it during lifetime. But if you say that anything just starts now, okay, when the debts become due, how can it be say that I was previously owed something? Okay, we're not going to have time to answer that because I think it'll take too long and we're running out of time. So we'll say this week's parsha is what? Vayigash. Actually, we go from the frying pan into the fire. Why? There's a resolution of the sinas chinam and the fighting among Yaakov Avinu's brothers. Really, there shouldn't have been so much conflict and hate and lashon hara going around, and that resulted in Golus Mitzrayim. Right? That's what happened to Yosef and his brothers. However, we have the resolution, like the Navi says, bring the stick of Yosef and the stick with Yehuda's name on it, bring them together. Right? Yehuda and Yisrael, we're going to have grand reunion. Things are going to be okay. That's how the parsha starts. But it ends with, but now the Gentiles are going to turn against the Jewish people. What happened in Egypt? For 5 years only. Okay? See the limit of this thing. For 5 years, Yosef had promised to feed just his father's family. Okay? 70 souls. We're just counting the males. So usually males are about half the population. 140 people are living on the Egyptian dole, right? For a total of 5 years. 5 years, 5 years are up, they're done. The Egyptian common people, though, have to sell everything they got in this world. Their bodies, their lives, they lose their houses, all their livestock, their land. But who else is also privileged? Who gets special, stipend from Pharaoh himself? The priests, the Komrim, the Kohanim. Yeah. And how long does their special privilege last? Not just the 5 years remaining of the famine, but, Yosef lived for another 66 years after the famine was over. He was in charge for 66 years, and Levi died 23 years after Yosef or so. Okay, 23 years. So that's a total of 89 more years where the priestly class, which is much larger than these initial 140 Hebrews or so, who got special privilege for just 5 years, the priestly class are enjoying themselves. They have it good forever. Yet, when it comes time for the servitude, Pharaoh is going to be able to lay all the problems, all the resentment of the Egyptian common people on whom? Not on the political class, not on Pharaoh's chevra, not his Kohanim, but on whom? The outsiders, the Hebrews. It's all their fault. Okay? Even though they were succeeding on their own, the Mitsuyanim Sham, they were doing everything on their own and through their own efforts. It doesn't really matter. When it comes to resentment, that's what we see going on in the Western world right now. There's all sorts of terrible things going on, okay? Economically speaking and all that. But it's always fun to blame the Jews, especially you and I know what's going on in America. There are too many people who are just beginning to say, somehow or other, the fact that Israel exists and Jews are successful, that is the source of my problems. And that's why now I'm going to begin to hate Jews, or the surrogate for the Jews is the state of Israel. Doesn't matter how Zionist you are, like it or not, it represents us. So people are going to take their blame for whatever's going wrong, the inflation and whatever other problems they have. Somehow it's going to be the Jews' fault, and that's going to lead to anti-Semitism. We're seeing it happening now, right now. So watch out, run away to the land of Israel, and try to keep all the mitzvahs. Repent. The solution is not political. It's not hasbara, because what do they care? The solution is repent. It's all a message from God that we have to keep the commandments and stop doing the averos. So we'll leave it at that. Have a good one, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Avi. Shabbat shalom. Be well.
Shabbos, Shabbos.